Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Gustav. So as you might know, I used to experience protracted withdrawal sensations from psychiatric drugs, and I used to have, lots of persistent pain for years as well. And oftentimes during that period in my life, I felt a really powerful sense of dread. I used to call it the terror, this sinking feeling following me around, as if fear itself had me on a leash. And if I ever got a dash of like, oh, maybe things will get better now, this leash would just kind of yank me back to make sure that I remembered my place. I'm in withdrawal, I'm in pain, and I'm never getting out of it. It's weird because I'd be in the same room with other people, and yet they kind of seem to share this common reality. And even though I was, right there next to them, I was off, somewhere else, in the withdrawal dream, where strange and unbelievable things happened, and I couldn't wake up. That's the way I felt for years. I never or seldomly felt safe. Now, at the time, I never considered how my interpretation of my situation, that I'm trapped in a nightmare, and how I responded to it with fear and trembling, how this could actually reinforce this withdrawal dream to make it my actual reality. In other words, what kept the nightmare going was just that I kept buying into it. And this isn't just an abstract metaphor. It's been found in pain research that a learned stress response can maintain pain and some other mysterious syndromes. But the good news here, though, is that clinical trials for types of pain and long COVID and people's real-world experiences with protracted withdrawal sensations have shown it's possible to unlearn this stress response by cultivating a sense of safety within ourselves. I've called this video Toward Feeling Safe in Withdrawal, not Feeling Safe in Withdrawal, because this is a process, and withdrawal sensations can be really frightening. And sometimes when people start getting into a mind-body approach, they might be like, oh no, I'm still feeling fear. Am I making it worse? But from what I experienced, it's still okay to feel fear. It's still okay to get preoccupied with sensations because we're in a learning process. It's probably not all going to happen overnight. The aim here is to teach the unconscious aspects of our minds where this stress signal and withdrawal sensations are coming from, that we're now safe, even if we don't feel that way. We're now safe even if we don't feel that way. Now, as we do this, as this message kind of gets deeper into our mind, as this message is received, our fear will naturally dissipate over time. And the sensations will then just kind of take care of themselves. We're not trying to fix anything, we're trying to understand something. And once we fully integrate the understanding that we're okay, that nothing's wrong with us, that there's nothing to fear, that's when the sensations start to go away. This is assuming, of course, you've been checked out by a physician. I am not a physician, to rule out other things. And I am talking about protracted withdrawal sensations here that have been going on, and maybe for those who have been tapering slowly, on and on. I'm not talking about acute withdrawal. That's something that just has to pass on its own. So my interpretation of my situation for about 5 years was that I had protracted withdrawal syndrome, and there was just nothing I could do about it. I was tapering at the time as well, and even though I tapered such micro amounts, I still often felt sick. And when I'd read the forums, I was told there's basically a withdrawal alarm clock, set biologically, I guess, and I had to wait for that clock to ring to wake me up from the withdrawal dream. Time, they say, is the only healer. Now, some people, I think, do find comfort in this withdrawal clock idea, or in some way, they're able to wait out the clock, and maybe over time things shift in their lives or within themselves, and the sensations go away. But for me, this interpretation, it didn't quite work. I was too scared of the unknown and whether or not I would, ever heal. This just did not make me feel safe. I also remember with chronic pain, always being told the importance of feeling safe in my own body. But I was like, why would I feel safe when I'm in so much pain? Or there's this saying in physio that your hurts can't hurt you. And I was like, yes, they can. They're doing it right now. Now, I guess the point of the saying is that pain doesn't equal structural or neurological damage, but a credible explanation of why I still felt pain was never really provided. Likewise, for protracted withdrawal sensations, an explanation, it was just lacking. I mean, I felt horrible, but what exactly was it that I needed to heal from? There's some thought it's persistent neurotransmitter adaptations, particularly serotonin. Some withdrawal psychiatrists suggest this. I've made a video about that, and I'll link to that video below. But very briefly in that video, I talk about a study where people stopped SSRIs, and then months or years later, participants were tested and shown to have fewer serotonin receptors compared to those who had just never taken these drugs at all. And some people are like, oh, okay, maybe this is why protracted withdrawal happens. Maybe we have to wait for these or other receptors to recover. Maybe. But the kicker is that the people in that study, they felt fine. In fact, a prerequisite of the study is that the participants felt well. They weren't in withdrawal. So the brain changes were no longer relevant because somehow the nervous system can find other ways to rebalance itself, to heal itself in ways we might not expect it to. I would also just add, in my experience, if protracted withdrawal sensations were always a persistent brain injury, I don't think the sensations would, go away sometimes for a long time, and then come back and shift and change around so much. I had some very persistent things, but I still had some version of waves and windows. And some of that is conditioning. The brain can learn when it's withdrawal time. Just like how Pavlov's dogs would salivate, at the ring of a bell. One of the biggest bells, for many people with withdrawal sensations is higher stress levels. And a glaring example of this, or maybe a reverse example of this, is that I've heard of, multiple people who go on vacation and the withdrawal sensations get better. They feel almost like themselves. They have a good time. Then when it gets close to coming home, the withdrawal sensations start again, and they're at an utter loss. But if there's always a brain injury, I don't think that's going to take a vacation with us. I don't think injuries take vacations. So I think if it's possible to feel better on vacation, it seems like it's also possible to feel better at home. But maybe home is stressful, or maybe it's a conditioned response because this home has become associated with suffering. Now, personally, I wasn't able to go on any vacations. Usually I couldn't even leave the house. But in a similar vein, a more common example is if, it's possible to have windows, then maybe that's a sign that healing has already taken place. Or if we can have better days, maybe that's a sign that we've already healed from our worst days, or maybe completely. I'll freeze frame for a second in case this isn't clear. What I mean is, why would a brain injury pause for a few minutes or a few hours or days or weeks or months and then come back? I find it hard to make any sense of this other than the following reinterpretation, which I'll give now back in the video. So what did end up making the most sense to me is that there's an ongoing stress response happening that could get switched on or off, even if it kind of felt like it was on all the time. Now, why did this make sense to me? Well, was I angry or upset about anything in my life? Yes, extremely. Did I have any past trauma that might have been getting activated by all this stress? Yes. Do I have a personality that's really hard on me and creates this kind of internal pressure? Yes. Has this stress response signal or TMS approach worked for people, showing that it's a credible idea? Again, yes. It's been proven to work for chronic pain, for long COVID without tissue damage, and success stories, abound for fibromyalgia, eczema, chronic fatigue syndrome, IBS, and lots of these, mysterious syndromes. So why not protracted withdrawal sensations, especially, when nothing else, could really make any sense to me? Now, I did not come to this conclusion right away. This is something I wrestled with, but as I accepted this reinterpretation first for pain and started seeing success with that, withdrawal sensations started fading away at the exact same time. And I was kind of forced to reject the concept of protracted withdrawal syndrome for myself, or that microtapering was causing my problems. Because quite clearly, the reality for myself was that I was calming down this stress response by moving away from scary interpretations that something was wrong with me. And not only that, but with this new interpretation, I could respond to the sensations in a new way. So now we can maybe even a bit start to reinterpret withdrawal sensations as not coming from damage, but from a learned stress response. I think one of the most powerful ways to teach our mind's safety is by the way we respond to the sensations themselves. I in particular really needed a response overhaul. I used to get withdrawal sensations or pain, and I would just completely freaked out. I was always scared of things getting worse or spreading, and sometimes they did. So I tried to dull my mind by watching films or whatever, which I kind of had to do anyway because the pain was so bad that I was disabled for large portions of the day. So I just constantly lived in fear, and this fear was kind of always percolating whether I was focused on sensations or not. Now, I think my initial fear-based reaction to withdrawal sensations was a reflex, a conditioned response. It wasn't my fault. It was just the way it was. Given my interpretation at the time, how else could I have responded? But I think as I learned more, and after I had that initial reaction, there existed an opportunity where I could teach myself to respond to the sensations and in my own reaction to them differently. So instead of thinking, oh no, I'm damaged, it's happening again, I'll never get better, I could alternatively say to myself, I'm okay. I know I'm not damaged. This is only a stress response. And I could soothe myself further by saying, hey, I know an alarm bell is going off in my mind because there are things in my life that have really upset me. And these scary sensations are a message that I'm in danger. But actually, this is no longer the case. I'm safe now. So this message, these sensations, they're no longer needed. This is, very, very different than my, previous responses. I used to get so angry and scream at people or God or the psychiatrist, who haunted my dreams. But oftentimes I was just alone in my room, with spinning thoughts, my heart, pounding, this fear, this great fear response. But then I could step outside myself and ask, who am I responding to? There's no one here. There are, four walls and a window in that one. The only person, talking is me. the only person putting pressure on myself is me, even though it's coming from, this sinister memory, of these psychiatrists. But in reality, there's no one here to harm me anymore. In fact, I was fortunate enough to have people in my life who were trying to help me. I used to have a mantra, I'm not a victim. I'm not a martyr. I'm a survivor. I'm not a victim. I'm not a martyr. I'm a survivor. And well, I technically am a victim of psychiatry, and I'd like to get reparations if we lived in a just world. I didn't want that to become my identity. I didn't want to be a martyr for psychiatry. To say, look at me. Look at how bad, psychiatric drugs can destroy people. Now, I'm not saying anyone wants to be this, by any means. No one wants that. For me, it was just a motivational mantra saying that psychiatry will not get the best of me. I can survive it. And significantly, I already have. There are no more psychiatrists here. I have no more appointments. I'll never have to have an appointment again. I'm safe. And obviously, for me, the perceived threat of psychiatry was one massive thing that helped keep this stress response going, that kept these sensations going. And I've been talking, more here about psychological sensations, dread, fear, spinning thoughts, rage. But alternatively, if I was feeling more of a physical sensation, of which I felt many, I could still have a similar response to cultivate safety by reminding myself that, again, there's no threat here. Because sometimes this danger alarm goes off for reasons we might not know, whether it's unconscious emotions or a conditioned response, but we can always remind ourselves that we're okay, even if we don't feel okay. Even if the mind is still perceiving a threat, we know better, and we can tell it that. Now, it's also possible that there is ongoing significant life stress, outside of the withdrawal sensations. There's stuff going on in our lives that's extremely stressful, in which case we can tell our mind that we're aware of this stress, and we don't need to be distracted by these sensations. This is a standard John Sarno approach, as Sarno saw sensations as trying to protect us from painful emotions. So we can just tell our minds that emotions are safe and we don't need the sensations to protect us from them anymore. Now, one of the reasons our interpretation and responses are so important is related to something I talked a little bit about last video, something called predictive coding. It's a theorized brain function that the brain is constantly trying to predict what is going to happen next. The brain builds a model of reality and just uses it over and over again because it's more efficient. What this means, perhaps for us, is if we buy into the idea that we have an ongoing drug injury and we respond in that fearful way and believe that hopefully maybe one day time will heal us, maybe, then what is the brain going to predict? It's going to predict withdrawal. But by changing our response to the sensations, we can change what the brain is going to predict next. So instead of feeding this prediction with fear, which is what these sensations live on, they live on fear, we can change the input. We can change the predictive formula by inserting this new message that we're okay, even if we don't feel okay. But we do have to mean it or come to mean it. And confidence in this process increases as we understand that these sensations are coming from stress, from powerful emotions, from conditioned responses, and that we're not damaged, but it's safe to have emotions. Then we can calm down the brain's danger signal. The fear can start to dissipate, and the sensations can take care of themselves. We can also do this preemptively by just regularly reinforcing this message by reading or listening to John Sarno books, doing some journaling, which I made a video on. I also have a page on SUBSTACK with lots of different TMS resources to help integrate this knowledge. And then our minds can start shifting. I almost felt like a click in my mind sometimes, if that's even possible, as I inputted this new TMS knowledge from external resources like a podcast or an audiobook. And then again, I would reinforce this to myself. I'd reinforce this message internally by talking to myself or journaling, as I was dealing with ongoing sensations. Now, it can take a little while, to get this understanding deep within ourselves to where our minds completely accept this. But, that is when the fear starts to dissipate. In a sense of emerging, from this withdrawal dream, it happens. In this regard, it might also help us to return, as we're ready, to activities we're avoiding or putting off because we're just held hostage by our fear and too scared to do them. And that can also kind of maintain, a danger signal in that way. So I learned to respond to things I'm scared to do with, well, I'm doing it anyway, even if I have to slowly work my way back up. I remember when I went to a grocery store for the first time in years, my eyes were just, tearing up. Who knew, walking into a grocery store, could be such a cathartic experience. I remember just playing hockey as well, just moving again. It was just, pure delight. I didn't even think about, feeling safe in those moments because I was just carried away by the activity. That's why second nature activities can be so helpful in forgetting withdrawal because they provide a safety message and we don't even have to say anything. We can just do things. Now, it took me a while to build up to this, but that's what all this TMS knowledge is about, to give us the confidence and ability to get back there, to live life, to get out of this nightmare. And when I think back, on my own experiences now, that's kind of what it feels like. It was just a bad dream. I mean, it still affects me today because it was real and heartbreaking, but there is life on the other side of this. And it's possible, to re-immerse yourself in life, in a wonderful way, that I never thought would be possible again. So I'm going to leave you here with two videos. There's a Pain-Free You video on feeling safe with sensations, which I'm sure I stole from, and another video with Alan Gordon on actively learning to feel safe with uncomfortable sensations. So I hope maybe that was helpful in some way, and I'll see you next time.